This is Joe Tucker, President of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. Welcome again this week to the Academy's official podcast, The Rule of Law, The Academy Speaks. Today, we're going to be touched upon a very sensitive and important issue. We're going to be talking about child sex trafficking. We're going to meet a lawyer who happens to be a very good friend, Nadeem Bezar, who is a partner at the law firm of Klein and Spector. And we're going to hear from Nadeem about how one lawyer can make a difference in changing lives. Welcome, Nadeem.
Good morning, Joe, and thank you for having me on.
Nadeem, let's dive right into it. And I am going to let listeners know that we're going to be talking about issues that may be particularly sensitive to some people, to anyone listening, and that is sex trafficking and the trafficking of minors. Let's begin with some of the cases that you have handled dealing with sex trafficking.
So, again, Joe, thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for the attention to this very important topic. Before we continue, I think it's always kind of important that we give our audience or the listeners a trigger warning that because of the nature of this topic, even in whether it can be in casual conversation, but in casual conversation, it can be quite upsetting. And for those listening who may have had experiences, it could cause or trigger, adverse reactions. So we're mindful of that, and I just wanted to put that warning out there. The nature of the work is very exciting, very upsetting. A lot of varies before all types of descriptions. It involves typically women, although men are victims of trafficking as well. Typically women who are taken at a very young age, at a time when they're vulnerable, where they're easily deceived, and they're seduced into a lifestyle where they're actually selling their bodies to people, to strangers, on a repeated basis, on a daily basis, and all the consequences that stem from them.
How do you, as a civil litigator, what have you done to help fight this? How have you used the civil process to help stem the tide of this very bad problem that's going on?
Yeah. So, it starts with my first experiences or first confrontation with this situation. I can remember handling a case where I appeared in what's called dependency court, and there was a young woman there, and the dependency situation involved a young woman who had been taken from her own family home and placed in foster care or placed in a residential treatment facility. And she appeared in court that day, and she had the support of an attorney. She had her grandmother. She had others who were trying to do right by her, including a very, very sympathetic judge. And what she was doing was looking around the courtroom, looking to identify somebody she referred to as Matthew. She thought Matthew was the person that she wanted to see the most. And she kept asking, "Where's Matthew? Where's Matthew?" She cursed at everybody, cursed at her grandmother, cursed at the judge, cursed at her lawyer. And I came to find out later on who Matthew was. Matthew was her pimp, was a person who had been trafficking her for years, even as a minor. We found out later on she was able to run from her foster care home and connected up with Matthew. And tragically, a month later, we found out that she had passed. It struck a chord in me because I thought to myself, what can I do about this? And so I started researching more and more where the trafficking was going on, who might be held responsible, why people were allowing this to occur. And we developed an area of law where we started holding institutions that permitted this illegal, immoral activity from occurring. And we started bringing lawsuits.
Well, that's what I want to talk to you about, because one particular piece of litigation, as you and I have talked about this before, deals with where individuals are trafficked at motels and hotels, where they're housed at hotels.
I work on these cases with a strong team here at my firm, and there's actually a particular attorney here that I work with, and I'm going to mention her by name, Emily Marks, who is a young, talented attorney, also a proud Temple Beasley School of Law alumni, and has
Shout out to Temple Law School.
absolutely the owl soars high,
Yes.
and Emily is just probably at the top of the game in this area. And her and I have worked together, and Emily oftentimes taking the laboring oar. What we've done is we've analyzed the requirements of businesses like hotels and motels, and the requirements about providing a safe environment for those who walk on their premises, the requirements of inspecting for dangerous conditions, for criminal activity. And what we have found is oftentimes hotel motel owners, particularly budget level hotel motel owners, where there's a little bit more of a culture of not telling, not coming forward. And what they've done is they've oftentimes housed these young women in rooms, strings of 3 and 4 rooms at a time that are rented by one particular person, the trafficker or a friend of the trafficker. And what's happened also then is Johns come in through the front door, the side door, the back door, and Johns are the buyers of sex. And they go to these rooms, they knock on the door, a transaction takes place, and quite unfortunately, and I know it's not a comfortable word to hear, a rape takes place immediately thereafter.
Well, what about these hotel operators?
Yeah. So what we did is through the litigation process, right, and taking of depositions and requesting of documents, what we found out that there's sort of a tilt to the way many of these budget hotels manage their books and things like that. They're looking to fill rooms. It's all about filling rooms. And if they can sell a room and keep the rooms full at a certain occupancy level, the hotels become profitable. Oftentimes the rooms are paid for in cash, and so that creates a whole different dimension of how rooms can become profitable. There's not a record. Maybe there's not cards filled out or registration records filled out. And so these payments for rooms might be kept off the books. I've deposed quite a few of the traffickers, and what we have found out, traffickers have testified that they stayed at hotels, one in particular in Northeast Philadelphia, for months at a time, renting 3 and 4 rooms every day for 3 and 4 months at a time. When we've asked for registration records during the course of litigation, we might get 2 or 3 nights of registration records for 1 or 2 days. So you can, one, imagine whether or not registration records were actually done, and payment of the rooms, whether that payment in cash actually went into the registration drawer or reported to the proper taxing authorities.
Through these efforts, through you and your firm and your team, have you been able to begin to stem the tide of some of these hotels and what they're doing?
So I feel pretty proud of some of the things that we've accomplished. We've got a long way to go for anybody in any kind of practice where there's a tort and there's compensation. We know great reform comes from using the civil justice system. I see some reform coming forward. Oftentimes, and I've said this to a few people, and I've shared posters with people on my drive from the Northeast, from Philadelphia, say down south, whether it's Savannah, Georgia, or somewhere else that we like to visit. Along the highways now, we see these great big billboards that say stop or end trafficking now. If you see something, call this number. There's a lot of resources that people can call. You stop in a rest stop and you're leaning over the sink to wash your hands, and there's a great sign that says, if you see something, call somebody. In airports and things like that.
I need to stop you for a moment, Nadeem, because I think this may be important to our listeners, where I want to ask you 2 different questions. One, you said see something, say something. Who do I say something to if I see or suspect sex trafficking happening at a hotel or at a rest stop or something like that? What should someone do?
Yeah. So depending upon the situation, obviously you don't want to put yourself in a dangerous situation. You don't want to confront somebody, oftentimes, not always. but oftentimes the sellers of sex, not the survivors, but the lack of a better phrase, the pimps or the traffickers, can be dangerous people. They're not always dangerous or physically violent,
Hmm.
but they can be. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where you could be harmed, where you could be shot or stabbed or beaten or anything like that. So what you have to do is probably understand that something's going on, and you can say something to the people at the front desk. They should know themselves. They should know themselves. But if you call them out, then there's a sense of responsibility. Hey, that person, that other patron noticed something. Now I have to do something about it. And hopefully the people at the front desk will do the right thing. The other thing, it's posted everywhere, hotlines to call, and I can share a telephone number. I think it's a difficult number to remember. I wish it was a 1-800 stop trafficking, but there are 800 numbers out there.
Why don't you, if you don't mind, just give us the number to call
Yeah, the number to
if we suspect sex trafficking going on?
yeah, the number to call is 1-888-373-7888, and that's a national hotline. The resources and the people, once you get to them, are incredibly responsive.
Let's talk about the survivors for a second and the label that used to be, well, one, it used to be said it was a victimless crime, and two, the actual persons who were trafficked were actually criminally prosecuted and they would have criminal records. What can we lawyers do to help with that type of situation?
Yeah. So again, we're going to take we're going to put our lawyer hats on in a second, but if we take a step back and we think about it, first of all, we have to sort of change our perceptions of this, right? And we have to sort of start understanding things. The victims or survivors of trafficking are complex on so many levels. Complex on so many levels. It's really just been our experiences that they've grown up in environments where they don't have the love, the affection, the attention that they need. I can tell you, growing up in my own household, I wasn't a well-behaved kid all the time, but I had two parents who were going to keep me out there and keep me doing the right thing. They're going to call me home on time for dinner. They were going to make sure I sat down and did my homework. And there was always this opportunity of success or improving myself. Many of these survivors don't have that opportunity. They come from households that are a little bit difficult. Unfortunately, as we know, mental health issues, addiction
Hmm.
issues have run rampant in our culture, in our cities. It's very difficult at times for these children in the environments that they're growing up in. But these kids are then searching, just like that client that I had in that courtroom who was looking for Matthew. They're searching for one of the five fundamental basic needs that an individual has, right? There's water, there's food, there's shelter, there's love. And unfortunately, they find it in the wrong people and people that are manipulating them. So first and foremost, understand that we're dealing with a really, really complex individual who's been lured into this situation. But the next important thing is we need to understand that these are not criminals. These are survivors. These are victims of abuse. And to treat them like criminals, to arrest them, to handcuff them, to put them in the back of police cars, to take them to police stations, to fingerprint them. For those of you listening who have ever been fingerprinted, unfortunately, I'm going to claim that I have too. Being fingerprinted is a very traumatic thing. Let me see who you are. Roll your fingers across ink. Of course, they do it a little bit differently now. But these are very difficult situations. And when they get out of the system, they have left behind a record for solicitation. How a child, someone under 18, can have a record for solicitation, I do not know. So the next thing I would offer is this notion of expungement becomes incredibly important. It becomes important
Well,
for multiple.
let me talk about the vicious cycle though. With the criminal record, you have someone with the criminal record. It's just preventing this victim from this survivor from moving on with their lives.
Yeah.
it's not fair, and that's the biggest understatement I can make today, that it's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an albatross of a horrible experience that they've had, right?
Hmm.
So you've been traumatized. You're still processing it, right? And there's all sorts of studies. Read whatever study you want. But what we understand is that the human brain does not begin to process the trauma it received at the teen years, even in the teen years. It's not until our mid to late 20s, which explains the statute of limitations that have come about for victims of sexual abuse, minors who are victimized by sexual abuse. It's best understood when we put it in the context of clergy abuse, that children have until age 30, 40, 50 to pursue these lawsuits because they don't really understand the trauma they sustain, right? And so they come out of a situation and they have this albatross or weight of a criminal record. Now, let's talk about what a criminal record can do to us. One, it excludes us. It excludes us from getting certain types of jobs. You now have to put a check marks on an application. And if we're talking about a situation where someone's interviewing you, having a criminal record, particularly for something as difficult to understand as solicitation, can be very confusing for a future employer. Two, it prevents receiving aid in the form of government aid for things like housing and other financial assistance. And three, and maybe even most important, the damage to one's psyche when we consider that as a child, right, while I was supposed to be studying calculus, geometry, physics, whatever, American history, whatever you take in
Or just
school,
gym class.
or just gym class, right? We're just hanging out with my friends playing video games or being on a soccer team. I was doing this, or somebody was compelling me to do this. And as a result of my actions, as a result of, it's not even a transgression, right? But there's this great notion. Why are we holding people accountable 20 years later for their youthful transgressions, right? They can't get the aid they need. They can't get the housing they need. They don't qualify for certain aid. You then add that they're oftentimes become young mothers, young fathers, and now where are they going to live? What do they know how do they know how to make a living? So you have a child, you have no home, you have these horrible traumatic experiences, and we are just lacking in the supports that we provide to these young adults.
Well, what about expungement clinics?
Yeah, so I think they're spectacular. There was a great resource run by I believe it was the barristers here in Philadelphia, where a lot of lawyers got together. There was a lot of hard work and efforts where people started expunging records of crimes that just shouldn't have remained on people's records. There's an opportunity to do that in every city, every county in the country. And for anybody listening who wants to know how to do it or how to get involved, first of all, I'd say we're all lawyers, so we can figure it out. But if you need some help, you know how to find me. You know how to call me. I will set you up with a public interest group in your city, in your township, and we will make sure somebody you're trying to help help one person a year, whatever firm you're at, whatever household you're in, commit to helping one person a year. It'll take you a half a day, but you will start the process of changing lives. Not just one life, but generations of lives. That mother, that child living in that house, or the children living in that house, and you'll make someone feel good.
Nadeem, I can tell you it's lawyers like you and you being a fellow in the academy that makes me proud to be president of the academy, knowing that I get to associate myself with you. But I'm going to ask you the difficult question. How do you do this day in and day out without it taking some type of toll on you? Because we haven't gotten into the specifics of some of these cases you have. And I don't think we need to, but how well, we don't need to because it's gory and it's just the underside of society. But how do you deal with this day in and day out with children who have been abused, who have been neglected, who have been trafficked, whose lives have been just horribly wrecked without it taking a toll on you?
I have tremendous support here at my firm and in the office in terms of the work we do. It's not just that I'm always digging out or trying to find people to help. People are really are pretty awesome when they stop and they think about how they might help someone else. And so professionally, I have a lot of support. I have great support at home. My wife and my family are very proud of the work that I've been able to do. Any kind of event that we could attend, they're supportive. And every now and then, I get a shoulder massage at home, and someone tells me you did good today. The reality is, it's sort of self-supportive. I've thought about this for a while. I don't see myself as being the one that helps these survivors, these children, these women. I see them actually helping me. I think that the work that I'm privileged to do, the thought that someone in their darkest hour, these crimes and the victimization is very personal, very. And I mean, really, can we think of a situation that could be more personal? And it takes them down a very dark path, and that they would seek my help to help them get out of that dark place. I think is a godsend. I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to give back and help people, and it's motivating for myself. So I don't
It's
know how
good.
to
It's good for
answer
you.
it any way other
You
than
you
that.
you
Yeah,
answered it in a very heartfelt kind of way.
yeah,
Here's what I've been asking many of the guests that have been on the podcast. With the work that you do, what gives you hope with everything that's going on in America right now? We don't need to get into the specific politics that are going on, but what gives you hope? What can you tell young folks, young lawyers, and just average Joe and James who are listening to this podcast? What gives you hope with what is going on today?
yeah. So I think things like social media and the way information is disseminated nowadays can be alarming at times. At the same time, the manner in which we can get information out and communicate with others is, the click of a phone screen, right, on an app. I think that what I try to do is to educate people in communication, into asking for help, into recognizing the difficult situations that are out there. I think that resources are building, and I know we're in an environment where there are cuts, financial cuts from all sorts of government agencies, and the feds have made some cuts in all sorts of areas. I can tell you, in the past, there haven't been nearly as many cuts in the child welfare system as there were in other areas. Unfortunately, I don't think that that's the trend right now, but that there are resources. We just got to get you there. But by the manner in which we communicate now, we can get people almost all the help or access to all the help they need.
Nadine, on behalf of the Academy, thank you for what you're doing. On behalf of the nameless and the names you know of kids and adults who have been trafficked, thank you. This has been The Rule of Law, The Academy Speaks, and my guest, Nadeem Bezar. Thank you for listening.